A life on the edge. Esinam's promise. In the quiet town of Bapawis, nestled between lush hills and flowing rivers, Esinam Mensah was the pride of her family and community. At 21, she was a star, academically gifted, a natural leader, and deeply involved in her church. Her calm demeanor and warm smile endeared her to everyone who met her. She was a role model for young women, often leading programs in the youth group and excelling at university. Her parents, Ifo and Akio Mensah, were respected elders in the church and held their daughter up as a shining example of virtue and discipline. But behind Esinam's bright smile was a growing fear. For weeks, she had felt unwell, nausea, fatigue, and changes she couldn't ignore. Her suspicions were confirmed one morning after taking a test. Esinam was pregnant. The betrayal. The father of the child was Kweku Opia, the charismatic choir leader at their church. Kweku was older, confident, and charming, a man who could command attention with a smile and a hymn. He had been kind to Esinam, taking an interest in her studies and encouraging her to pursue her dreams. But Kweku's attention had taken a different turn, leading to moments Esinam regretted. She had hesitated to let their relationship cross boundaries, but Kweku's promises of love and commitment had swayed her. "I'll always be here for you," it said. "You're the most important person in my life." Now, standing in front of him in the empty choir room, Esinam felt cold anger and betrayal. "Kweku," she began, her voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." Kweku's confident demeanor shifted to one of panic. He frowned and stepped back. "What are you saying?" "You heard me," Esinam said firmly. "I'm pregnant, and you're the father." Kweku's reaction shattered her. His face twisted with denial, and he shook his head vigorously. "No, Esinam. Don't put this on me. Who else have you been with? How do I know it's mine?" Esinam's heart sank. "How dare you," she whispered. "You know you're the only one." But Kweku was relentless. "You're lying. You've been with other men. I won't take responsibility for this. Don't come to me with this nonsense." The breaking point. Esinam left the church in a daze, her world crashing down around her. Kweku's rejection was bad enough, but the thought of telling her parents terrified her. They were pillars of the church, known for their strict values and high standards. She could already hear the whispers. How could Esinam do this? Her parents must be devastated. She's not as perfect as they thought. The weight of shame and judgment pressed down on her chest. By the time she reached her small bedroom that evening, Esinam's thoughts had turned dark. She couldn't bear the disgrace she would bring upon her family, the ridicule she would face from her community, and the betrayal from someone she trusted. On her desk, she wrote a note to her parents, apologizing for letting them down and explaining that she couldn't live with the shame. Her hands trembled as she placed the note beside a small bottle of poison she had purchased earlier. A timely intervention. As Esinam held the bottle, tears streamed down her face. She whispered a prayer, apologizing to God for her decision but feeling there was no other way. Suddenly, the door to her room flew open, and Afia, her childhood best friend, rushed in. "Esinam!" Afia exclaimed, freezing at the sight of her friend holding the bottle and the tea-stained note on the desk. "What are you doing?" Esinam looked at Afia, her face crumpling. I can't face them, Afia. My parents, the church, everyone, they'll never forgive me. I've ruined everything." Afia quickly crossed the room and grabbed the bottle from Esinam's hand. "Have you lost your mind?" "Esinam, this is not the answer." Esinam collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm pregnant, Afia." Kweku denied it. "My parents would disown me. What's left for me? My dreams, my future, it's all over." Afia knelt beside her and held her tightly, letting Esinam cry into her shoulder. When the sob subsided, Afia pulled back and looked into her friend's tearful eyes. Listen to me, Esinam, Afia said firmly. You are one of the strongest people I know. This is not the end for you. Yes, it's hard, and yes, people will judge, but you can't give up on yourself. Think about your dreams, your goals. You've worked too hard to throw it all away. Esinam shook her head. But my parents. They'll be upset, Afia admitted, but they're your parents. They'll come around. And if they don't, I'll stand by you. We'll figure this out together. Afia's words planted a small seed of hope in Esinam's heart. For the first time, she considered the possibility that her life didn't have to end because of this mistake. A decision to fight. That night, with Afia by her side, Esinam decided to face her challenges head-on. She wasn't sure how her parents would react, but she knew she had to tell them the truth. Whatever happens, Afia said, holding her hand, you're not alone. We'll get through this together. Esinam nodded, feeling a flicker of strength returning. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for now, she had taken the first step, the fallout. Summoning courage. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the Mensah family's modest but well-kept home. Esinam sat at the dining table, her hands trembling as she clutched a cup of tea she hadn't touched. Her parents, Ifo and Akua, had just returned from church, their Bibles still in hand. Ifo, a tall man with graying hair and a stern expression, placed his Bible on the table and glanced at his daughter. Esinam, is something bothering you? You've been unusually quiet these days. Akua, a soft-spoken but firm woman with a round face and piercing eyes, nodded. Speak, child. Whatever it is, we are here to listen. Esinam's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this moment would change everything, but she also knew she couldn't hide the truth any longer. Taking a deep breath, she looked at her parents and began. Mom. Dad. I have something to tell you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ifo and Akua exchanged puzzled looks. Go on, Esinam, Ifo urged. Esinam's voice shook as she continued, I've made a mistake. I'm pregnant. Heartbreak and fury. For a moment, the room was silent, save for the ticking of the wall clock. Then, Ifo's face darkened with anger. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. What did you just say? He demanded. Esinam lowered her gaze, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm pregnant, Dad. Akua gasped, clutching her chest as though she had been struck. Esinam. How could you do this? After everything we've taught you. After all the sacrifices we've made. I'm sorry, Esinam sobbed. I didn't mean for this to happen. Ifo paced the room, his hands clenched into fists. Who is responsible for this? Who dared to disgrace our family? Kweku, Esinam replied, her voice trembling. The choir leader. Akua's eyes widened in shock. Kweku. The church choir leader. The one everyone respects. How could this happen? Confronting Kweku. Determined to get answers, Ifo and Akua dragged Esinam to Kweku's home that afternoon. Kweku, dressed casually in a button-down shirt and slacks, answered the door with a cheerful smile that quickly faded when he saw Esinam and her parents. Good afternoon, Uncle Ifo, Auntie Akua, he greeted nervously. What brings you here? Ifo wasted no time. Kweku, we've come for answers. Is it true that you're responsible for Esinam's pregnancy? Kweku froze for a moment, then shook his head. Uncle, I don't know what you're talking about. Esinam is pregnant. I had no idea. Esinam stepped forward, her voice breaking. Stop lying, Kweku. You know it's your child. Why are you pretending? Kweku's face hardened. I don't know what you're talking about, Esinam. I've never touched you. Akua's jaw dropped. Kweku. You're a leader in the church. How can you lie so boldly? Kweku, unbothered, walked to a shelf and retrieved the Bible. Holding it up, he said, I swear on this Bible, uncle and auntie, that I'm not responsible for Esinom's pregnancy. If I'm lying, may God punish me. Ifo and Akua stood in stunned silence. They had respected Kweku as a man of God, and his denial, reinforced by his oath, shook them to their core. Esinom is disowned. When they returned home, Ifo and Akua were silent for a long time. Finally, Ifo spoke, his voice cold and distant. Esinom, Kweku has denied this, and he swore on the Bible. What should we believe? That our daughter is lying. That you've been with other men. Esinom's heart shattered. Dad, I swear to you, Kweku is the father. He's lying to protect himself. But Ifo wouldn't hear it. You've brought shame to this family, Esinom. Do you know what people will say about us? How they'll look at us in church. Akua, still in tears, added, we raised you to be better than this. And now, you've ruined everything. Esinom dropped to her knees, sobbing. Please, Mom, Dad. Don't do this. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please forgive me. But her parents were unyielding. Pack your things and leave this house, Ifo said coldly. We cannot let your disgrace destroy this family. Afia's support. Later that evening, Esinom left her home with a small bag of belongings. The once proud daughter of the Mensah family now wandered the streets, homeless and broken. She eventually arrived at her best friend Afia's small one-room apartment. Afia, a petite woman with short natural hair and a kind face, opened the door to find Esinom standing there, her face streaked with tears. Esinom! Afia exclaimed, pulling her friend into a tight embrace. What happened? Why are you here? They threw me out, Esinom whispered. They said I've disgraced the family. Afia led Esinom inside and sat her down. Don't worry, Esinom. You're staying with me. You're not alone in this. Esinom broke down, crying into her friend's shoulder. Thank you, Afia. I don't know what I'd do without you. Afia smiled gently. We'll get through this together. One step at a time. Struggles and resilience. A new beginning in adversity. The one-room apartment where Afia lived became a refuge for Esinom. It wasn't much, cramped with only a small bed, a table, and a few chairs, but it was filled with warmth and support. Afia worked tirelessly at her job as a secretary, and she encouraged Esinom to keep pursuing her studies despite the challenges ahead. You've come too far to stop now, Esinom, Afia said one evening as they sat together, Esinom sewing a small dress for her unborn baby. Focus on finishing school. The rest will fall into place. Esinom, her belly growing larger with each passing day, nodded. You're right, Afia. I owe it to my baby to give her a better life. But it wasn't easy. Esinom needed to earn money to support herself and her unborn child. She started working part-time as a waitress at a local diner during the evenings and took up sewing clothes for clients during her free time. Facing judgment and stigma. Esinom quickly discovered that society was not kind to single pregnant women. At the diner, customers often whispered about her behind her back, and some openly commented on her situation. Such a shame, one woman muttered to another as Esinom served their table. A girl her age, already carrying a child. No husband in sight. Esinom bit her tongue and kept walking, refusing to let their words break her. But at night, when she returned to Afia's apartment, she often cried herself to sleep. Why do people have to be so cruel? She asked one evening, tears streaming down her face. They don't know my story. They don't understand. Afia held her hand tightly. Let them talk, Esinom. Their opinions don't define you. What matters is that you're doing everything you can for your baby. That makes you stronger than they'll ever be. Balancing work, studies, and pregnancy. Despite the long hours at work and the emotional toll of constant judgment, Esinam remained determined to complete her education. She attended her classes during the day, often struggling to stay awake after working late into the night. Her professors were aware of her situation, and while some were supportive, others were less understanding. One day, after Esinam arrived late to a lecture, her professor raised an eyebrow and said, "Miss Mensah, I hope your personal life isn't interfering with your studies." Esinam kept her head high and responded, "No, sir. I'm doing my best to keep up." Afia continued to be her rock, reminding her to take breaks and care for herself. "You're doing amazing, Esinam," she said one afternoon as they shared a simple meal of rice and beans. "I'm so proud of you." The final stretch. As the end of the semester approached, Esinam's belly had grown large, and the physical strain of pregnancy became more apparent. But she refused to give up. She spent late nights studying, her hands resting protectively on her stomach as she prepared for her final exams. On the day of her last exam, Esinam walked into the lecture hall with her head held high. Despite the stares and whispers from her classmates, she focused on her paper, writing with determination. When she handed in her exam, relief washed over her. She had done it, she had completed her studies, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Nyamkai's arrival. As Esinam stepped out of the exam hall, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Her water had broken. Panic set in as she clutched her belly, but a kind classmate quickly called for help, and she was rushed to the hospital. Hours later, after a difficult labor, Esinam gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Tears streamed down her face as she held her daughter for the first time. "She's perfect," Esinam whispered, stroking the baby's tiny hand. "Nyamkai. That's her name. It means gift from God." Afia, who had been by her side throughout the delivery, smiled through her own tears. "She truly is a gift, Esinam. And so are you. You've been through so much, and you're still standing." Esinam kissed her daughter's forehead and made a silent promise. "I'll give you the best life I can, Nyamkai. No matter what." A renewed sense of purpose. As Esinam held her newborn daughter, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The struggles she had faced, the judgment and rejection, all seemed distant in that moment. She had survived the storm, and now she was determined to build a brighter future for herself and her child. Her journey was far from over, but Esinam knew one thing for certain: she would never give up. Rising above adversity. Building a better life. Years passed, and Esinam's life began to take shape. The small sewing job she had taken to support herself during her pregnancy grew into something more significant. With her natural talent for designing clothes and her hard work, she slowly built a loyal clientele. Her home workspace, once limited to a single sewing machine, expanded into a small boutique in the heart of Bapawis. She named it Nyam's Touch, a nod to her daughter Nyamkai, who had been the driving force behind her determination to succeed. Esinam worked tirelessly, pouring her creativity into every design. Her dresses were elegant yet affordable, blending traditional patterns with modern styles. Word spread quickly, and soon, her boutique became the go-to place for weddings, celebrations, and everyday wear. One evening, as Esinam closed her shop, she looked at the brightly lit sign above her door and smiled. "We've come a long way, Nyamkai," she whispered. "And we're just getting started." Nyamkai's extraordinary talent. Nyamkai, now a bright and cheerful 10-year-old, was the joy of Esinam's life. She had inherited her mother's determination and resilience, but also possessed a gift entirely her own, her voice. From the moment she could talk, Nyamkai loved to sing. Whether it was humming tunes around the house or performing at school events, her voice captivated everyone who heard it. It was rich and soulful, carrying an emotional depth far beyond her years. At her school's cultural day, Naomkai performed a traditional song that left the audience in awe. Parents and teachers approached Esinam afterward, praising her daughter's talent. "She's destined for greatness," one teacher said. Esinam beamed with pride. "She truly is my gift from God," she replied. Esinam's growing success. As Naomkai's talent blossomed, so did Esinam's business. She began receiving orders from clients outside Bapawes, expanding her reach to neighboring towns. Her designs were featured in local fashion shows, and her boutique grew into a full-fledged brand. Despite her success, Esinam remained humble. She often reflected on the difficult path she had taken to get here and made it a point to mentor young women in her community. One day, as she stood in her boutique overseeing her team of seamstresses, Esinam thought about how far she had come. "This isn't just for me," she said to herself. "It's for Naomkai and for every woman who needs to know that she can rise above her circumstances." Kweku's decline. While Esinam and Naomkai thrived, Kweku's life took a different turn. After denying his responsibility for Esinam's pregnancy, Kweku had gone on to marry another woman, Oma, in a lavish church ceremony. He had climbed the social ladder, becoming a popular gospel artist known for his captivating voice. But his success was short-lived. Years into his marriage, Kweku and Oma remained childless, despite numerous visits to doctors and prayer camps. The memory of the oath he had sworn on the Bible haunted him, though he refused to admit it to anyone. His wife, frustrated and embarrassed by their situation, began to pressure him. "Kweku, we need to try harder. People are talking. They are saying there's something wrong with us." Kweku's guilt grew heavier with each passing day. He couldn't help but think about Esinam and the child he had denied. His music career, once thriving, began to falter as his guilt consumed him. A mother's pride. One evening, as Esinam and Naomkai sat together after dinner, Naomkai began to sing softly. Her voice filled the room, carrying a melody so beautiful that Esinam stopped what she was doing to listen. "You're amazing, Naomkai," Esinam said, pulling her daughter into a hug. "Never stop using your voice. It's a gift." Naomkai smiled. "Thank you, Mama. I want to sing for the world someday." Esinam's eyes welled up with tears. "You will, my love. You'll achieve more than I ever could have dreamed." Though Esinam's journey had been filled with challenges, her success and her daughter's bright future reminded her that the struggles had not been in vain. Kweku's growing guilt. Meanwhile, Kweku's life continued to unravel. His wife grew distant, his music sales declined, and his reputation in the gospel community began to falter. One night, he had a vivid dream. In the dream, he stood before a raging river, struggling to cross. An old man appeared and said, "Your path is blocked by the truth you refuse to speak. Only honesty will set you free." Kweku woke up in a cold sweat, the weight of his guilt heavier than ever. He knew he couldn't continue living this way, but the thought of confessing terrified him. He had built his career and reputation on a lie, and admitting the truth would cost him everything. A crossroads. As Esinam's star rose and Kweku's life spiraled downward, their paths seemed destined to cross again. But for now, Esinam focused on her work and raising her daughter, unaware of the storm brewing in Kweku's heart. Naomkai's voice continued to capture hearts, and Esinam's boutique flourished. The struggles of the past were fading into distant memories, replaced by a future filled with promise and hope. But fate had a way of bringing the past to light, and the next chapter of their story would test the strength and resilience they had both built over the years. A twist of fate. Naomkai's rise to stardom. By the time Naomkai turned 15, her singing talent had propelled her into the spotlight. What started as performances at school events and local church services quickly turned into invitations to sing at weddings, community celebrations, and even radio shows. Her voice was mesmerizing, soulful and mature beyond her years, capturing the hearts of everyone who heard her. One day, during a live performance at a cultural festival, a video of Nyamkai's performance went viral. Within days, she became the talk of the country. Record producers and musicians reached out, eager to work with the young star. Her mother, S&M, now a successful entrepreneur with her thriving fashion brand, acted as her manager. S&M was fiercely protective of Nyamkai, ensuring that every decision made was in her daughter's best interest. "Mama, I can't believe how far we've come," Nyamkai said one evening as they sat together. "All I've ever wanted is to make you proud." S&M held her daughter's hand tightly. "You've already done that, my love. And I'll make sure no one ever takes advantage of you." Kweku's plan to revive his career. Meanwhile, Kweku, once a celebrated gospel artist, was struggling. His career had dwindled to near irrelevance, and his once loyal fans had moved on to younger, more vibrant musicians. He had become desperate to regain his former glory, but no amount of effort seemed to reverse his decline. One day, Kweku's manager burst into his office with exciting news. "There's this young girl, Nyamkai," the manager said, placing a laptop on the table. "Her voice is incredible, and she's the hottest name in the industry right now. If we can collaborate with her, it could bring your career back to life." Kweku leaned forward and watched the video of Nyamkai's performance. Her voice struck a chord deep within him. For a moment, he felt something he couldn't explain, a strange familiarity. "Set it up," Kweku said, his tone determined. "Let's work with her." A meeting at the studio. S&M hesitated when Nyamkai's manager informed her about a collaboration offer from a gospel musician. She had grown wary of the industry and was selective about who Nyamkai worked with. But when the manager mentioned Kweku's name, S&M froze. "Kweku," she repeated, her mind racing. "I haven't heard that name in years." "Mama, who's Kweku?" Nyamkai asked curiously. S&M forced a smile. "Just someone from my past, my love. Don't worry about it. We'll meet him together." On the day of the recording session, S&M and Nyamkai arrived at the studio. The moment Kweku entered the room, S&M's breath caught in her throat. He looked older, tired, and worn down by life, but she recognized him instantly. Kweku froze when he saw S&M. His eyes darted to Nyamkai, and something clicked. The girl's resemblance to him was undeniable. His hands trembled as he stared at the daughter he had denied. "S&M," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Is she?" S&M's eyes blazed with anger. "Yes, Kweku. She's your daughter. The child you abandoned. The one you swore wasn't yours." Nyamkai looked back and fought between her mother and Kweku, confused. "Mama, what's going on? Who is this man?" The confrontation. Kweku dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Nyamkai, I'm your father," he said, his voice barely audible. "S&M, I'm so sorry. I lied. I was scared and selfish. I denied you and our child, and I've been cursed ever since." S&M's emotions boiled over. "You think an apology will fix what you did, Kweku? Do you know what I went through? Do you know what it was like to raise a child on my own while the whole world judged me?" Kweku sobbed uncontrollably. "I know, S&M. I've paid the price for my sins. My marriage failed, I've been childless, and my career is in ruins. Not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did to you and Nyamkai. Please, forgive me." Nyamkai, still processing everything, stepped forward. "You're my father?" she asked softly. Kweku nodded, his voice breaking. "Yes, Nyamkai. I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to make it right. Please, let me be part of your life. Esinam's decision. Esinam stood silently, her heart torn between anger and compassion. She had worked so hard to build a life for herself and Nyamkai, without any help from Kweku. But as she looked at her daughter, she saw the curiosity and longing in her eyes. Finally, Esinam spoke. Nyamkai deserves to know the truth about where she comes from. I won't deny her that. But don't think for a second, Kweku, that this absolves you of the pain you caused us. Kweku nodded, tears still streaming down his face. Thank you, Esinam. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. A new chapter. As they left the studio that day, Nyamkai held her mother's hand tightly. Mama, I'm not sure how to feel about all of this, she admitted. I know, my love, Esinam said gently. Take your time. You don't have to decide how you feel today. Just remember, you're my greatest blessing, and I'll always protect you. Nyamkai nodded, her voice soft but determined. I want to know him, Mama. Not because I forgive him yet, but because I need to understand. Esinam smiled faintly, proud of her daughter's strength. Then we'll take it one step at a time, together. Redemption and reunion. Kweku's journey to confession. The confrontation at the studio weighed heavily on Kweku. Seeing Nyamkai, the daughter he had denied, and facing Esinam's pain shook him to his core. For years, he had tried to bury his guilt, but now he knew he couldn't run from the truth anymore. One morning, with trembling hands, Kweku stood outside the modest home of Esinam's parents, Ifo and Akua Mensah. The couple had aged significantly since Kweku last saw them. Ifo's once strong frame was now frail, and Akua's hair had turned completely grey. When Ifo opened the door, his eyes narrowed in recognition. Kweku, he said coldly. What are you doing here? Kweku removed his cap and lowered his gaze. Uncle Ifo, Auntie Akua, I've come to confess and beg for your forgiveness. Akua stepped forward, her expression wary. Forgiveness for what? For lying about Esinam, Kweku said, his voice cracking. For denying her pregnancy and abandoning her when she needed me most. Nyamkai is my daughter, and I've spent years pretending she wasn't. I'm so sorry. A parent's regret. The words hit Ifo and Akua like a wave. They had spent years living with the regret of disowning their only daughter, but hearing Kweku's confession brought a new level of pain. You lied to us, Akua said, her voice trembling with emotion. You swore on the Bible, and we believed you. Because of you, we turned our backs on Esinam. Do you know how much we've suffered since then? Kweku fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I know, Auntie. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I had to tell you the truth. I've ruined so many lives, and I'll carry that burden for the rest of mine. Ifo sighed deeply, sitting down in a nearby chair. You've done terrible harm, Kweku. But the person who deserves your apology the most is Esinam. Akua nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. We haven't seen our daughter in years. We've prayed for a chance to make things right with her. Will you take us to her? A reunion years in the making. That weekend, Kweku accompanied Ifo and Akua to Esinam's home. The large, elegant house was a far cry from the life they had imagined for their daughter after they cast her out. The sight of the house filled them with pride but also shame. They had doubted Esinam's ability to thrive, yet here she was, successful and strong. When Esinam opened the door and saw her parents standing there, she froze. Emotions flooded her, anger, sadness, longing, but she quickly composed herself. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice even. What are you doing here? Ifo stepped forward, his eyes brimming with tears. Esinam, we've come to ask for your forgiveness. We were wrong to disown you. We chose our pride and reputation over our love for you, and we've regretted it every day since. Akua nodded, clutching Esinam's hand. Please, my daughter. Let us make things right. We want to be part of your life again, and Nyamkai's too. Behind Esinam, Nyamkai appeared, her curious gaze shifting between her grandparents and her mother. Mama, who are they? She asked softly. Esinam took a deep breath. Nyamkai, these are your grandparents. Nyamkai's role in healing. Nyamkai's eyes widened. My grandparents, she repeated, a small smile forming on her face. She stepped forward and hugged Akua, then Ifo, surprising them both. Welcome, Nyamkai said warmly. Mama always said I'd meet you someday. Her kindness and openness melted Esinam's heart. She turned to her parents, her voice trembling. I've held on to so much pain because of what happened. But seeing Nyamkai reminds me that forgiveness is the only way to truly move forward. I forgive you both. Tears flowed freely as the family embraced for the first time in years. Forgiving Kweku. Later that evening, Kweku found himself alone with Esinam. The tension between them was palpable, but Kweku knew this was his chance to say everything he needed to. Esinam, he began, his voice filled with emotion. I can't undo what I did to you, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am. Denying you and Nyamkai was the worst mistake of my life. I've paid for it in so many ways, and I'll never stop regretting it. Esinam looked at him, her expression unreadable. You hurt me in ways I can't even describe, Kweku. You left me to face the world alone, and it wasn't easy. But I'm stronger because of it. And Nyamkai, she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Kweku nodded, tears streaming down his face. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you how sorry I am. Esinam sighed deeply. I forgive you, Kweku. Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger doesn't serve me anymore. But let's be clear, I've moved on from our past, and I don't need anything from you. Kweku nodded, understanding. Thank you, Esinam. For giving me more grace than I deserve. Moving forward. In the weeks that followed, Esinam's parents became a loving presence in Nyamkai's life, doting on their granddaughter and making up for lost time. Nyamkai, ever the peacemaker, encouraged her mother to keep the door open for forgiveness and healing, reminding her of the importance of family. Kweku, though forgiven, remained on the sidelines, knowing he had a long way to go to rebuild trust. He began dedicating his life to helping young people in the church, hoping to prevent others from making the mistakes he had made. For Esinam and Nyamkai, life continued to flourish. Their bond grew stronger, and their journey became an inspiring tale of resilience, forgiveness, and redemption. A new beginning. Esinam finds love again. After years of focusing on her business and raising Nyamkai, Esinam finally opened her heart to the possibility of love. She met Kwabena, a thoughtful and supportive man, during a community business networking event. Kwabena was a widower with a kind heart, known for his humility and generosity. He admired Esinam for her resilience and the way she had raised Nyamkai into a confident and talented young woman. Over time, their friendship blossomed into something more. One evening, as the sun set over a serene park where they often walked, Kwabena knelt down and proposed. Esinam, you've shown me what true strength and love look like. I want to walk this journey with you and Nyamkai by my side. Will you marry me? Tears welled up in Esinam's eyes as she nodded. Yes, Kwabena. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding day. The day of Esinam and Kwabena's wedding was one of joy and celebration. The ceremony was a beautiful blend of tradition and modernity, with vibrant African prints adorning the decorations and guests. Esinam looked radiant in a gown that combined her signature fashion designs with traditional African patterns. Nyamkai stood proudly as her mother's maid of honor, dressed in a bright, elegant dress that reflected her youthful energy and star status. She was beaming with excitement, not only for her mother but also for the special gift she had prepared. As the evening reception began, Kwabena stood to address the guest. "I'm honored to be part of this incredible family," he said, glancing warmly at Esinam and Nyamkai. "And tonight, we have a special treat. Nyamkai has prepared a song for her mother, one she wrote herself." The crowd erupted into applause as Nyamkai stepped onto the stage. Nyamkai's global moment. The room fell silent as Nyamkai began to sing Gift of Hope, a song inspired by her mother's journey. Her voice, powerful yet tender, filled the room with emotion. The lyrics spoke of love, resilience, and triumph over adversity, drawing tears from nearly everyone present. As Nyamkai's performance reached its climax, a videographer recorded the moment, later sharing it online. Within hours, the video went viral, capturing the hearts of millions. The world was captivated by her soulful voice and heartfelt story. The performance not only cemented Nyamkai's place as a global sensation but also honored the strength and sacrifice of her mother. Kweku's redemption. Though Kweku had been forgiven, he continued to face the consequences of his actions. His career as a gospel artist had never recovered, and his personal life remained solitary. However, instead of succumbing to bitterness, Kweku chose to channel his regret into something meaningful. He began working with youth programs, mentoring young men and sharing his story as a cautionary tale. At church events and community gatherings, he spoke about the importance of honesty, accountability, and humility. "I made mistakes that cost me dearly," he often said. "But through God's grace and the forgiveness of those I wronged, I found a new purpose. I hope my story can help others avoid the path I took." Kweku found peace in knowing that Nyamkai and Esinam were thriving, even if he would never play a central role in their lives. A lesson for all. As the wedding celebration wound down, Esinam took a moment to reflect. Surrounded by her family, friends, and the love she had rebuilt, she realized how far she had come. "Life will challenge us," she said in a toast, her voice steady but emotional. "But through resilience, forgiveness, and faith, we can turn our trials into triumphs. I am living proof of that, and I thank all of you for being part of my journey." The crowd erupted into cheers, raising their glasses to toast the woman who had overcome so much and built a life of love and success. Moving forward, Esinam and Kwabena's marriage became a symbol of second chances and the power of love. Nyamkai's career flourished, her music touching lives around the world. She remained grounded, always attributing her success to her mother's strength and faith. Though Kweku remained in the background, his work with young men left a positive impact on the community, turning his mistakes into a source of wisdom for others. The end.